Even some of those with selective admissions were not meeting state standards. But in the regular high schools, which serve the vast majority of students, quote, almost no students are prepared to succeed in college, unquote. Renaissance 2010 failed to achieve a renaissance, but the strategy, a heavy reliance on test scores, choice, closing low-performing schools, opening charter schools, is now the model for the federal Race to the Top program. It cost millions, destabilized neighborhoods, it embittered residents who lost their local school, and it did little to improve education for the vast majority of students. Now, Milwaukee is a good test case of school choice and a cautionary tale for a state like Florida, or a state like New Jersey, or a state like Pennsylvania, or any of the other states that are now saying choice is the answer. Advocates of vouchers and choice in Milwaukee were motivated in the 1980s primarily by the poor academic performance of African American students in the city school system. Milwaukee has had vouchers since 1990 and has had charters for almost as long. Today there are 20,000 students in voucher schools in Milwaukee, about 17,000 in charter schools, and about 80,000 in a shrinking public school system. For years, since the voucher program started in 1990, researchers debated back and forth, were the kids in the voucher school doing better, not better, was choice working, not working. Some claimed that it did, some claimed that it didn't. And today, 2011, some 20 years after vouchers were launched, there is a consensus among researchers. The academic gains of the students in the voucher schools are no different from those in the public schools. But what about achievement in the regular public schools? According to theory, competition with the voucher schools should have produced dramatic improvement in the public schools, except that it didn't. In 2009, Milwaukee participated in the federal test called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. Milwaukee students participated in NAEP for the first time ever. So we don't have a trend line to show how African American students in Milwaukee performed over the past 10 years, but we do know how they performed in 2009. And here's the bad news. The test scores of black students in Milwaukee's public schools in grades 4 and 8 in both reading and math are lower than those of black children in the same grades in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. They're abysmal. The students in the voucher schools are doing no better. Choice was not a silver bullet in Milwaukee. There was no rising tide, no boats were lifted. Choice did not produce a burst of innovation. There was no quantum improvement in the academic performance of the students who were supposed to be the beneficiaries of choice. And now Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and other states are poised to follow in the footsteps of Milwaukee. Charters is another reform proposal that turns out not to be a silver bullet. Now, the original idea for charters was proposed in 1988 by Albert Shanker, who was the president of the American Federation of Teachers. He had the idea that charters could be created by public school teachers who were specifically concerned about at-risk students. They might be able to go to their peers, their fellow teachers, and say, let us create a small school and give us 5 years to show what we can do. And we're going to find the kids who are dropouts and bring them back. We're going to find the kids who are at risk of dropping out and so show what we can do to keep them in school. We're going to find the kids who have needs that are not being addressed. We're going to help those kids. And Albert Shanker thought this was a great idea, and he went around the country selling it to members of the American Federation of Teachers. And he turned against it in 1993. I write about this in my book, The Death and Life of the Great American School System. He turned against it because he realized that the charter idea was facilitating the rise of privatization, and that under the guise of charters, many entrepreneurs were coming into the charter sector and skimming kids, not taking the kids most at risk, but taking the kids who would get the highest test scores. So he turned against it. He also turned against it because he saw a company called Educational Alternatives, Inc. in Baltimore. This was a private organization, for profit, and he was repelled by the idea that money could be skimmed off out of public funds to pay a profit to investors in a company. Well, the basic idea of charters, and I should back up and say there are now over 5,000 charters in the United States. and they enroll about 3 to 3.5% of the kids in the United States. Some places more, especially in big cities. State of Florida, it's about 5% of kids are in charters. The basic idea of charters is they get substantial autonomy from government regulation in exchange for accountability. That is a promise to produce results. They are government funded, they get public money, and they are managed by private companies. Well, by the very nature of charters, they vary dramatically. They vary dramatically in who runs them, what they do, what their program is, what their curriculum is, because they're deregulated schools. Some charters get consistently high test scores. Some charters serve the kids that charters were intended originally to serve. Kids who have special needs, kids who have language issues, kids who are at risk of dropping out. But under the No Child Left Behind law, which has been the law of the land now for 10 years, charters are incentivized not to reach out to the neediest kids. They're incentivized to compete and show that they can get higher test scores than regular public schools. Some charters pay their leaders exorbitant compensation in the range of $300,000 to $400,000 a year, not for the principal, but for the CEO, the rainmaker. Some of the charters have experienced financial scandals, nepotism, conflicts of interest, and self-dealing, because in most of the state laws, whereas nepotism and conflicts of interest are banned in public schools, it turns out they're not banned for charter schools. And so we have examples of charter founders hiring their sisters, brothers, uncles, cousins, and aunts and stacking the board with them or giving them contracts to do the cleaning or to supply the goods and services. A principal in California, a charter principal in California, was recently indicted on charge of having misappropriated over $1 million of public funds. These are the kinds of things that happen in deregulation. We should remember what happened in September of 2008, how deregulation nearly brought our economy to its knees. But we're moving in that direction with charters. A charter operator in Pennsylvania buys all of his school supplies from a for-profit business that he owns, and he pockets millions of dollars every year in profit. He's on both sides of the table. Some charter operators have used their charters to engage in unsavory real estate deals. They're virtual charters, that is, online charters, that have no brick-and-mortar building, but they get full tuition, and they have many students, few teachers, and they are considered cash cows in the education industry because of the millions that they're able to put away in profit. Some charters are known to screen out students who are English language learners or students with disabilities because they might drag their scores down. Some use their autonomy to remove students who have low test scores. They hold them back and hold them back and hold them back until they drop out. Or they simply tell them, this may not be the right school for you, and send them back to the regular public school. More than 90% of the charters are non-union schools.